Valerion the Dread. The beast that Aegon rode across the sea. Its flames forged the Iron Throne and brought the Seven Kingdoms to heel. Powerful, but not invincible.
A Song of Ice and Fire in Game of Thrones, How Dragons Die. What's going on? I'm Justin Thomas. If you've not subscribed, do so, and let's jump right into this one. Early on in the book series as well as the television series, a big worry of mine was once the dragons would hit Westeros, it would be over. They were essentially a trump card in my mind. Suffice to say, after a little bit of research and even now the progression of the television series, we know the dragons absolutely can die quite easily, actually. They are no trump card. They are not the ultimate power. Throughout the lore and throughout the history of Westeros, dragons often die in very unjust and undignified ways. That being said, let's take a look at A Song of Ice and Fire's history of killing dragons. So we're going to kick it back to that Qyburn clip in just one moment, but before we talk about the history of killing dragons in the world of Ice and Fire, we do need to discuss the actual history of the origins of the dragons. The skulls in which Qyburn is actually showing Cersei and where he shoots that particular skull, as we will see in a moment, is very important to take note of, and it is a piece of history in itself. So let's do just a quick rundown of the actual origins of the dragon. Dragons originally were natives and were said to have originated from beyond Ashai in the islands of the Jade Sea. Ancient dragon bones have been found as far north as Ib and as far south as the jungles of Sithorios. It's believed that dragons were first tamed by the Valyrian Dragonlords, who some say utilized strong blood magic to control them for many of thousands of years. The Valyrians ruled Essos in Valyria from the backs of their dragons. The Valyrian freehold was a great territory that spanned much of the continent of Essos itself, but has since fallen to ruin approximately 100 years before Aegon's original conquest, when it was brought down by a cataclysmic event known as the Doom of Valyria. I won't get too much into the events because we had a live stream a while back where we had a geophysicist break down all the actual events, and I'll link that in the information below. Lord Aenar Targaryen's daughter, Daenerys the Dreamer, had a powerful prophetic dream along with visions that Valyria would be destroyed. Foreseeing the doom, she convinced her father to leave Valyria before the events. Aenar set sail, moving House Targaryen and their 5 dragons to the island of Dragonstone.
Slinked away to a dreary, remote, god-forsaken island. Forsaken no longer.
The Doom of Valyria disrupted the balance of magic in the world and killed most of the dragons in the world at the time. The Targaryen dragons survived because they were on Dragonstone and away from the catastrophic events of the Doom itself. It's important to take note, though, that the flames, but mostly the smoke and the ash, killed all of the dragons in the freehold, most likely dying from suffocation, which we can add to the list of ways dragons can die. The only dragons known to survive were the 5 dragons on Dragonstone. The dragons belonged to the House Targaryen, who had brought them over from Valyria when they went into exile. 4 of these dragons eventually died on Dragonstone, leaving only Balerion. However, the other dragons left eggs behind, and from these eggs hatched Vhagar and Meraxes, making up the 3 heads of the dragon. Balerion the Black Dread, probably the most famous in the lore of A Song of Ice and Fire. The largest of the dragons, Balerion was said to be large enough to swallow a mammoth whole. Steed of Aegon the Conqueror, Maegor the Cruel, and Viserys the First Targaryen lived over 200 years and died of old age, black and red in color, participated in the mighty Aegon's conquest. Meraxes, the steed of Rhaenys Targaryen, participated in Aegon's conquest but was killed by a bolt from a ballista in the First Dornish War. Let's take a quick look back at that scene with Qyburn now, with the ballista in which Qyburn was using in the skull, in which he was shooting it at.
They can be wounded, they can be killed. The finest artillators and blacksmiths in King's Landing have been laboring day and night, Your Grace. If you kindly pull that lever.
dragon skull was specifically a dragon skull that was shot in the eye, just as Meraxes was shot down from the sky with Queen Rhaenys Targaryen upon her back, and that scorpion is the same type of scorpion that was used in the First Dornish War in 4 AC to 13 AC. Although Meraxes destroyed the castle's highest towers and part of its curtain wall in its fall, the death of both the dragon and its queen was the greatest success Dornish ever had against the Targaryens. They gifted that skull to the Targaryens when they finally aligned, not by fear, but through marriage. And shooting a dragon in the eye, or stabbing a dragon in the eye, is a widely accepted method of killing dragons, although Tyrion in the books might disagree with you. Serwyn of the Mirror Shield is a legendary figure from the Age of Heroes. Although singers now claim he was a Knight of the Kingsguard, he is a favorite of the small folk. Serwyn served the ancient kings of the Reach from House Gardner, once saved the princess from giants. He slew the dragon Urax from approaching the beast behind his shield, so the dragon only saw his own reflection, then spearing Urax through the eye. Despite legends that have him as a member of the Kingsguard, an institution created in 10 AC during the reign of Aegon I Targaryen, Serwyn lived in the time of the First Men thousands of years before the Kingsguard in Westeros. Vhagar, the second largest dragon of the three, steed of Sinja Targaryen and Aemon Targaryen, participated in Aegon's conquest, killed in Dance of the Dragons by Daemon Targaryen and his dragon, Caraxes. The anatomy of the dragon. Dragon bone is as strong as steel but lighter and far more flexible. The dragon's bones are utterly impervious to fire. A dragon's scales are largely, but not entirely, impervious to flame, and serve as protection for more vulnerable flesh. As a dragon ages, scales thicken and grow harder, affording it even more protection, leaving dragons nearly immune to fire, although they can still be wounded by dragon flame. It is said that dragons have fire-made flesh. Great heat emanates from the dragons' bodies, to the point that they steam during cold nights. Dragons only eat cooked meat and use the extremely hot flame in which they breathe to cook their meat before eating it. A dragon can still be wounded by another dragon's flame. As dragons age, the fires they breathe become hotter and fiercer. Where a hatchling's flame can set straw aflame, the flames of an older dragon like Balerion and Vhagar, in the fullness of their power, could melt steel and stone. Plain and simple, the older the dragon, the stronger the dragon. But the dragon must grow past the age of hatchling, which is a common problem for all dragons in Westeros especially. A lot of dragons after the dance didn't make it out of the stage of hatchling. Everything from cannibalism to a conspiracy widespread throughout the Citadel by the Maesters themselves. We don't know what's to blame. It could be a combination of both. Cannibalism is definitely an issue for the dragons, but is their sabotage also playing a role in the difficulties for the dragons of the past, and possibly even in our story? It's safe to say that the most efficient way to kill a dragon is with another dragon. Dance of Dragons proved this. And it just so happened that at the start of a Dance of Dragons, you have the largest amount of known dragons in Westeros at any point in time, with King Viserys I reigning from 103 AC to 129 AC. There was 20 known dragons alive when King Viserys I died. That is the same year and the jumping off point for the Dance of Dragons. When King Viserys went to Dragonstone for a wedding of his daughter, Rhaenyra Targaryen, it's said that the island became the new Valyria because of the high number of dragons. So you have 20 dragons all ready to go. By the end of the Dance of Dragons, only 4 dragons that are known to survive. But it's not all dragon-on-dragon violence. There's a few things we learn from a Dance of Dragons. Not only does the dance show us the importance of the dragon rider specifically, tactics evolved for not only dragon-on-dragon conflict, but dragon-on-man. Yes, we know that the warrior has always been a threat to the dragon. We get this from Aegon's conquest in the First Dornish War. When we see it doesn't take an army, it just takes patience and some tactical sense. One good ballista, possibly even one good archer. But I'm not just talking about knights and warriors, I'm talking about dragon versus civilian. We see the vulnerability of the dragons. The Dragon Pits is a great example of this. It's terrible and definitely the saddest moment in my book for the Song of Ice and Fire's dragons. The storming of the Dragon Pit took place during the Civil War, during the riots tearing the city apart. A crazed mob of small folk, maddened by a shepherd's rantings, forced their way into the Dragon Pit at King's Landing and slew 4 dragons housed. When the mob first approached the gates of the Dragon Pit, they were able to clamber through the windows and break down the Dragon Pit's lesser entrance doors, which were made of oak and iron using crude rams and the blows of countless axes. By the time the attackers came pouring through the sands, all 4 dragons were roused, awake, and angry. The man known as the Burning Knight was a huge brute of a man who gained fame during the storming of the Dragon Pit. It's written that the Burning Knight slew Dragon Morgul, encased in heavy armor, rushed headlong into the dragon's flame, its spear in hand thrusting the point into the dragon's eye repeatedly. Even as the flame melted the steel he was encased in and burning his flesh. Since his real name was not known, the man became known as the Burning Knight. Most likely not an actual knight. Another example of the eye being utilized when attacking the dragon. During the time of the raids on the Dragon Pits, Syrax, who was being stabled in the Red Keep, was loosened by Prince Joffrey Valerian. He did as much damage to the populace as he possibly could. Some say thousands died. Nonetheless, Syrax was dead by the end of that night. A quote from Grandmaster Pycelle during the Dance of Dragons. When Targaryen fought Targaryen in the Civil War called the Dance of Dragons, an angry mob stormed the Dragon Pit, that huge, now ruined vault where the Targaryens stabled their beasts. Thousands died, but through sheer numbers and madness, 5 of the Targaryen dragons lay dead by the morning. I don't think he was too upset. That's another great thing about this. The dance gives us a great insight into the Maesters as well. And potentially, if they ever had a chance to tamper, especially with hatchlings, at the end of the Targaryen Civil War, the Dance of Dragons, a lot of hatchlings were lost. Probably the best time to justify this would be after the carnage of the Civil War. When you do the research on the Dance of Dragons and Aegon's conquest and the history of these dragons, you start to see the events that are carried out in the recent seasons, especially last season, when I looked at Jaime Lannister like a fool for charging Drogon in the way in which he did. And yes, probably still not the best strategy, but any of you guys that are book readers as well will know that Jaime is always looking to rationalize a honorable, or to go out in a way in which he can kill the most amount of his enemies. Fair to say that Jaime Lannister is sincerely not afraid to die. He just wants to make it worth it. But what Jaime's doing is going for Dany. He's going for the Dragon Rider. And it's hard to say what the dragons would do in this state if Dany was lost. Yes, they would survive, but I don't think they'd be an active asset to the war. There's never been a dragon that's had more than one rider at once. They do get new riders after a rider dies, but it's unlikely that these dragons would find a new rider, at least from what we know right now.
So we spoke, and so we spoke, that load cast me but now the rains we bore is home, with no one there to hear. Yes, now the rains we bore is home, and now the soul to hear.
So in the end, dragons can die by having their neck broke, they can die by getting shot by a bow and arrow, they can die from getting hit with a sword, a spear through the eye, they can suffocate, they can die as hatchlings, decapitated by a fellow dragon due to cannibalism, captivity for too long, starved to death. Being chained to a wall is no good for the dragons. We see that with Dany and her dragons, and she realizes it and unchains the dragons. Disease, weak genes, natural disasters, possible tampering from outside, but dragons are also deeply reliant on their dragon riders as far as battle goes. Dragon riders arguably just as important, if not more important, than the dragon itself. Whether it's a poor decision, maybe to take them out in weather that they just can't sustain, or just hooking left when they should have went right, or a cocky, incompetent dragon rider that goes into battle against a foe they have no chance against and no right to be going up against. Torn to pieces by a misguided, misinformed, angry mob. Killed by a Night King with an arm of an Olympic god. Ballistica, Trebuchet, Scorpion, or just a lucky guy with a bow and arrow. I'd like to thank everybody that supports me on Patreon, and if you want to support creativity, there's a link in the information below. I can't thank you guys enough. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to leave a comment and subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know how you think the dragons are going to play out for the rest of our series. Or if you have a favorite dragon that you want to mention, let us know, and I will see you guys soon.
I've been feeling so small. Watch the clock ticking off the wall. But tonight I'm letting it go. Spend my coin for sure. I'm gonna be myself, or I could be someone else. No one's stopping me now. I'm gonna skip my breaks, I'm gonna make mistakes. I just wanna feel alive. It's just what I do when I'm out, so try not to hold me down. Feel alive when I'm in this town.